For those of you who went to the Steamrail Open Day earlier this year, you may have noticed a couple of trains towards the back that didn't quite fit with the rest of the crowd. These were 3 XTrapolis 2 trains that a lot of people were interested in and taking lots of photos of, but unfortunately we weren't allowed in. Well, today that all changes, and in this video I'm going to take you inside one of the brand new XTrapolis 2 trains. We've been a bit spoiled recently in Australia with new and upcoming train announcements. Since the start of 2026, we've had the new Boonwurrung trains scheduled to start in revenue service in New South Wales, the new Australand trains now undergoing testing in Western Australia, and the election promise by the South Australian government to trial onboard battery electric trains in Adelaide. But now it's Melbourne's turn, and our newest train that is soon to be introduced, the XTrapolis 2. News about this project has been a bit overwhelmed recently with the Metro Tunnel opening, but many things have been happening with this in the meantime, with many gunzels out and about chasing these as they undergo testing around the network. And so I was invited by the Department of Transport and Planning on a special tour of the XTrapolis 2. I'll take you along on this tour and share my thoughts on the design. Some of you may remember that we also saw a mock-up of this train back in 2023, so we'll get to see how the designers have responded to the feedback that people gave them through that consultation. The XTrapolis 2 trains will be the newest ones to join Melbourne's suburban fleet. There is a bit of history to their development and specifications, but if you already know all of this, please feel free to skip ahead to the tour itself later by using the chapter markers here or in the video description below. To briefly summarise, these are new trains being built to replace the current fleet of Comenge trains. With the oldest ones coming into service 44 years ago now, these are getting a bit long in the tooth. One of the main issues with Comenge trains is their maintenance regime. Generally, the older the train and its components, the less reliable they are and the harder it is to get parts. This means that more trains are out of service at any given time, which affects wider network reliability. The XTrapolis 2s were first announced in 2021 with an initial order of 25. Like the HCMTs, they are designed to operate as a single connected set rather than 2 3-car sets like the older Comenge, XTrapolis 100s and Siemens trains. Among other things, this means that you can walk through the entire 6-carriage train. The first set was completed in 2024, and they were originally scheduled to be operating in revenue service by 2025, but obviously this hasn't happened yet. They have been doing a lot of testing though, so I think it's a safe bet that revenue service will start later in 2026. So that's a bit of background, now let's get started on the tour. We started off with a quick briefing on the trains, which are stored in sidings at the Newport workshops. The set that we saw today was the 7th to be built, led by carriage 8107. The numbering system is the same as HCMTs, where the second digit is the carriage number and the last 2 digits are the numbers for the overall sets. In terms of its operation, it is future-proofed for in-cab signalling, so it can be easily integrated with any future upgraded infrastructure. This will make it much easier rather than having to spend time and money retrofitting trains later. The driver's cabin looks very modern and spacious, and the inbuilt passenger counters above each door and between each carriage will be a big help for collecting reliable data about the network. The train has regenerative braking and also has the capability to run in a low power mode that draws less electricity than usual. This can be useful in cases where there's a fault or disruption and there's less power available, which means that trains can still operate rather than stop completely. The trains themselves are fabricated at Dandenong and are almost entirely modular, being built in different pieces and then fitted together. At least 60% of the train is locally made, including the couplers that are actually made in Gisborne, interestingly by the same company that makes them for the G-Class tram. Inside, the XTrapolis 2 felt to me like a more spacious HCMT, as well as that new train smell. This was most noticeable around the doors. There's plenty of room for people to stand, and many things for people of different heights to hold on to, including these egg beater poles in the centre of the aisle. As we talked about last time during the mock-up, the corridors are still the widest of any on the network, and it is very noticeable. It definitely makes moving around the carriage a lot easier, especially for people with a disability. Now, one of the aspects that I'm most interested in is the passenger information systems and wayfinding. As in the mock-up, there are plenty of screens around. Rather than a single small screen that's blocked by retrofitted poles like on the XTrapolis 100s, there is a suite of places to see information here. The design is similar to HCMT's, with dynamic line diagrams on the screens installed on the top of the walls, and these double-sided screens installed in the centre of each carriage aligned with the doors. This is a huge improvement on the current XTrapolis 100s and ComEnges and will be very welcome. While we were there, we had the onboard information system cycle through various announcements and displays, including for the Upfield, Craigieburn and Werribee lines where these trains will be deployed.
Werribee. For technical fault, this train will terminate at the next available station. Please change to the next service. To operational requirements, this train will become a different service. Please change at Flinders Street Station and await further instructions. Due to safety requirements, we're going to be delayed for around 10 to 15 minutes. Sorry for the disruption. We'll be moving again as soon as possible.
It seems like these announcements can be deployed easily by the driver if needed, which will be a good improvement when there's a disruption. When the line diagrams for each one showed up, they did seem rather small and it was hard to read the station names. There also seemed to be a lot of empty space that wasn't used, especially on the side screens. Given that it's a digital screen, hopefully this is something that can be changed relatively easily. Having the announcement text show up though is very good and will help with legibility and accessibility. But they were also missing some key information that is displayed on HCMT screens, like other lines at interchange stations. Maybe this is something that only shows when it's in passenger operation, I'm not really sure, but this is important. Something else I noticed was that there were very few network maps or line diagrams posted on the walls. Maybe these are coming later, but as I've said before, even with all this digital information, you still need analog systems as well. One gripe I had was that unfortunately the notorious issue from the HCMTs where an upside down B was used as a P on screens has somehow also made its way here. Realistically though, this is a minor issue and can be easily fixed, as has been done on the HCMTs recently. The onboard speakers sounded fine and clear, which is, again, a big improvement on the older trains where every announcement sounds like someone trying to shout at you through a towel from the other side of a steel bathtub. There are also plenty of accessibility improvements across all aspects of the train. There's a hearing loop throughout all the carriages, there are plenty of designated spaces for wheelchairs, and there's even a space left underneath priority seats for guide dogs to sit. One of the main changes is the ramps at the doors. The first doors on the first and last carriages are fitted with semi-automatic ramps. These still need to be operated by the driver, but their design makes them much easier and quicker to take in or out. They are wider than the ramps fitted in the XTrapolis 100s and can be adjusted to fit higher as well as lower platforms if needed. Some doors in other carriages also have the older manual ramps that can be deployed if needed. Now, one of the most important things to check was the door buttons. One of the most common complaints with the HCMTs is that the buttons are confusing, they're not able to be pre-pressed, and are easily prone to locking people out. I am very pleased to confirm that the buttons on the XTrapolis 2 not only have tactile feedback, but can also be pre-pressed. Now, it was great to see that a lot of the feedback given in the 2023 mock-up has been considered and changes have been made. One of the most important was about the space provided in the seats. They have been moved apart slightly, which gives noticeably more room, so this was an improvement for sure, as they are more comfortable now. Another change that was interesting to see was that some of the side-facing seats have been changed from flip seats to permanent ones. It seems that this has been done to accommodate an electrical box, but I'm not entirely sure why. Speaking of these side-facing seats, one thing we did notice was that they didn't fold down fully to a 90-degree angle. That is, when you sit down, you are angled noticeably back towards the wall, which wasn't very comfortable. Another change that's been made on previous feedback is that the seatbelt design for securing bicycles has been replaced by a Velcro strap. This is very welcome and will make it much easier to use. We also had a bit of a discussion on whether we preferred the silver or the white look on the train exterior. I personally prefer the silver, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Overall, it's a comfortable modern train, well suited for the tasks that it will be required to complete. One of the main benefits of this design is that it doesn't need a lot of infrastructure upgrades. These are about as much of a plug-and-play train as you can get, and seem capable of operating anywhere on the network. This has been a deliberate design decision to make the implementation as smooth as possible, which I think makes perfect sense to get the trains out there as soon as possible. It was interesting to see a modern train like this in amongst the heritage rolling stock nearby, which is a timely reminder of how far technology has come since the days of the Tates. A quick note to say thank you to the Department of Transport and Planning for inviting me along. Once again, a disclaimer that these are entirely my own views and there was never any attempt at influencing the content of this video or editorial control. There's no conspiracy here, I just like trains. So what's next? We were told that there are still some steps to complete, like driver training and final safety accreditation, which is standard for any new rolling stock. With many of these trains in testing already, I don't think it will be very long before we see the first of these coming into revenue service. There's no exact date confirmed yet, so we'll have to see whether the next big rolling stock announcement will be the introduction of the G-Class trams or the XTrapolis 2s into revenue service. It's anyone's guess at the moment. That's all for today. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more, please subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date on future videos. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.